I am Albert Torcaso, Torcaso. That's a Torcaso. And I approve of this message. Tomorrow, January the 20th, I will not, 2017, I will not, nor could I, ever celebrate, welcome, or accept the presidency of Donald Trump. I say that because for too many times now, the person who won the popular vote in the last 16 years, twice, the popularly American people elected person will not and has not held office. I will remind all Americans of every political ideology that history has said George W. Bush turned out to be a very poor president. But let me say something to former President Bush. Most of your policies proved to be detrimental to America. But you, sir, maybe I didn't agree with your beliefs, but you had conviction and compassion. And you believed what you were doing. We may not agree politically, but we could at least agree on that. And I had sent you, Mr. President George W. Bush, your father, George H.W. Bush, and also Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I have sent and received many responses from each of you as president. Each of you, even though President George W. Bush, I did not consider you the real winner because of multiple reasons, but I respected you for certain aspects of what you've done. You made a lot of mistakes. Then again, we all have. President Bush, George W. Bush, you answered, or your staff answered many of my petitions, both through email, and I've had more than one letter from the White House. President Bill Clinton, William Jefferson Clinton. I was upset about, well, let's just say that fiasco that you didn't use your better judgment with that young lady. But I forgave you. You're only human. You make mistakes. And I kind of half-heartedly emailed you on the White House website. When I seen White House in the mail, well, let's just say that I was nervous. And of course, the original George H.W. Bush was the first president that ever actually wrote me back. So I have contacted each president, no matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. And quite frankly, when the fiasco happened, Gore v. Bush or Bush v. Gore, I forget exactly how. I wasn't happy with the outcome. I wasn't happy with the two wars. I wasn't happy with the economy. But you know, Mr. Presidents, both Presidents Bush, Clinton, and President Obama, during that entire time, not once did I fear a nuclear war. Not once, not even with Iraq and Afghanistan, did I fear a nuclear war. With the man who is going to occupy the White House starting January the 20th, 2017, after having read his book, excuse me, but I got to tell you the name, Donald J. Trump, Think Big and Kick Ass. Mr. Presidents and my fellow Americans, he has a chapter on revenge. He purports to teach people how to get revenge and get even. And I believe that America has made a huge mistake that will harm every American, the wealthiest amongst us, and the poorest. But more importantly, when a man says openly that they like revenge, getting even, and they don't like a win-win situation, and when we witness what we witnessed during the campaign and even today with his Twitter accounts and the attacks on Representative John Lewis, they're deplorable. So I'm calling on George H.W. Bush. First of all, I want you to get well, Mr. President, and thank you for having yourself or your staff answering my letter about the space shuttle. I'm calling on you, Mr. President William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton. I'm calling on you, Mr. President George W. Bush, and Mr. President Barack Hussein Obama, and former candidates Hillary Rodham Clinton, and of course, Albert Gore. Hey, Al, you got the right name. You have the right name. I'm asking all parties to watch this man. But I'm going further, Mr. President. If at any time you feel that Congress and or President Trump are endangering the greater country and indeed the world, I'm personally asking you to find a way to impeach or arrest this president. And my concern, again, this is not, with all due respect to my Republican friends, libertarians, constitutionalists across the aisle, and President George W. Bush, one of your, Karl Rove once said, when appropriate, he will be partisan. I cannot think of any other time in history that I could be forgiven for being partisan. But, Mr. President, this is an American, in fact, a global issue. So I implore every politician with any semblance of power, I implore the Supreme Court, whether they become a conservative, a moderate, or a liberal court, I implore every legal entity, every activist in America of any party and of any persuasion, watch Mr. Trump. Watch this Congress. And if it becomes a threat to the very safety of all Americans, find a legal means to stop it. Because Mr. Presidents in this case, what we now have is a man who openly, I'm sorry, one of the alarms, and I have a technical issue with the video, Mr. Presidents and my fellow Americans, but her phone's acting up. Excuse me for a minute. I'll take care of that. That's my phone, my old phone. Sorry about that. Just shut it off. Mr. Presidents, please ignore that. That is, I implore you to see that this is not, let me take care of this for a minute. This is not being partisan. This is being concerned for every life. And my greatest fear, you know what, I'm not going to say it's a fear, it's a concern, is that when a man openly attacks our veterans, current and previous administrations, openly picks on disabled Americans, makes fun of them, thinks that speaking derogatively about women, wants to build up walls, and all the things that we've witnessed and it still do, that is unbecoming of any president. And frankly, President Bush's, President Clinton, sorry about the tech issues, and President Obama. This man is disrespecting every member of Congress and every president since George Washington. I implore each party to do away with the Electoral College. Further, I am a registered Democrat, and most of the time I vote Democratic for president. I have voted for multiple parties, for different offices. But I submit to you, whether you're the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, I ask you, repeal or replace the Electoral College. And every governor of the United States, repeal or replace the Electoral College. One of their provisions is to protect us from installing a man. Let us remember, women were not even factored in when our Constitution and all these things were written. Part of the provisions and duties of the Electoral College is to not allow an unqualified or unstable man to hold the White House. However, the Electoral College failed us. Having said that, Mr. Presidents of both parties, I believe the time has come that we allow the presidency of the United States to be won by the popularly elected candidate. Now, the question of fairness. I am fully prepared to lose every election for the rest of my life to whichever party, whether I like them or not. The only one who should win that office is the one who was the winner by popular vote. That means if we have the party that I don't necessarily favor, the policies I don't necessarily favor, I will concede. And in so doing, we will really not have to worry about a question of legitimacy. The year 2000 and all these problems would not have been an issue. I believe if we're going to say our government is of, by, and for the people, it must be left in the hands of the people. But Presidents Bush, both Bushes, President Clinton, President Obama, do not let our country end up in a disaster because of the whims of Donald Trump. But let me, for the record, Mr. President, as a matter of fact, President Trump, I don't have any ill wills towards anyone. But when we speak of, in a book, when we say we like revenge or getting even, or somehow think that speaking about women in such a deplorable way, I'm sorry, but that's what it was, is what we call locker room talk. Mr. Presidents, people of this country, I've been in a few locker rooms. I've never heard anyone act that way. And frankly, if I had, I would have called the police on them. So, Mr. Presidents, I know you love this country. Please protect it. Because at this point, I know that President Obama said he thinks we will be okay. Well, Mr. President Obama, Mr. President George H.W. Bush, Mr. President George W. Bush, Mr. President William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton, I don't think we'll be okay at all. I don't think that Mr. Trump has shown to have good judgment. We see scandals associated with almost every one of his nominees. It is the wealthiest cabinet if they get confirmed. It's a bad thing. And I can only ask that you would do the will of the people. And I apologize greatly. And I'm sorry I forgot Mr. President Carter. But maybe it was appropriate. Mr. President Carter, you have done so much for this great nation after you left office. You have done so much for so many people around the globe. Please protect this country now. And I'll tell you what will keep me up at night, Mr. Presidents. Knowing that a man who speaks of revenge, getting even, has access to the nuclear codes or the ability to order a counter-strike or a first strike. And all of you, from President Carter to President Barack Obama, you've been honoring the one China policy. And I apologize, President Bush. Mr. Trump has already caused friction. Please protect this nation. And may God truly bless America and the world. I am Albert Torcaso. And I approve of this message, Mr. Presidents, because you, I, and all of humanity and all forms of life, Mr. Presidents, and President Trump, you and humanity and all forms of life really does matter.